Hey guys, this is Ms. Volker, and I'm jumping on here real quick. As you can see, I'm outside on my back porch, so you might hear birds chirping. You might hear some dogs. You may even hear some boys yelling and screaming, but just ignore it. Anyways, today I wanted to go over a couple things to give you a little help on the areas of weight, volume, and measurement. All of these things we've gone over before, but since I didn't do a lesson with you last week, I wanted to give you just a little bit more help so you have this video to look back at. Also, I know last week you had your notes and you had some brain pop videos, but this video is just going to give you a little bit more of how I would teach it in a classroom. That way you can kind of understand it a little bit better, hopefully. And maybe practice it the correct way and not be doing it incorrectly. So this is probably my last video that you're going to get of me teaching, and I know you're so sad, but it's been fun doing these lessons with you guys, and I hope you guys have learned a little bit and enjoyed watching them. So like I said, we're going to go over some measurements with metric, which is centimeters and millimeters, and customary, which is feet and inches. Then we're going to have a little bit more practice with capacity, weight, and mass, which is what you went over in last week's packet. Okay, so here we go with the first slide of our lesson today. And this you will probably recognize. It is a Star Master page. It's page 122 if you wanted to pull that out of your Star Master book and follow along. So here we go with number 1. It says, which item did Adele and her mother most likely buy according to its weight? Now I'm going to circle weight because that's important. I'm looking for something that is going to be measured in weight. Now if you look down here, weight is using ounces, pounds, tons, grams, kilograms. Volume is any liquid, okay? And these are all the units for volume, and that has to do with liquids. So if we're going to do weight, that means we don't want liquids, because liquids is volume, not weight. So now I'm going to look at my answer choices. Milk, well, I know that milk is a liquid, so that would be volume, not weight. Orange juice. That's another liquid, so we can eliminate that. Potatoes, no, that's not a liquid, so I'm going to leave that. Yogurt, it's not really a liquid, but if you go to the grocery store, are you going to have to weigh it before you purchase it? Or is the cashier going to have to weigh it on a scale before she rings you up? No, because yogurt already comes in a pre-packaged container. Now potatoes, they do come in a pre-packaged bag sometimes where it's already weighed for you, like a 5-pound bag of potatoes or a 3-pound bag. But if you don't buy it already pre-measured, then you or your mom can put it in those little silver rings that you've probably seen. And then above it, it has a thing that looks like a clock. That's actually a scale. They're weighing their produce by pounds or ounces, and that tells them, the cashier, how much to charge you. So if you're thinking of things that you would weigh at the grocery store, it's going to be anything that's in the produce section, like your fruits and vegetables, salad, potatoes, onions, all those things come in weight before you buy them, okay? Number 2, Adele's mother wanted to buy butter. Butter is most often sold by the gallon. Well, I know gallon is a unit for volume, which is liquids. Is butter a liquid? No. So we're not going to measure butter in gallons. Butter is a solid, not a liquid. Liter. Well, I look over here and I see liters. So that means liters is a measurement for volume. Remember, again, volume is anything that's liquid. So I don't want to measure butter with liters because butter is not a liquid. Pounds. Well, I see pounds down here under weight. So do you think butter is possibly measured by pounds? Probably. The last answer choice is quarts. Well, I see quarts over here underneath the volume section, so that means quarts is for liquid. So I definitely don't want to pick quarts either. So the most often you would see butter sold by the pound, C. Okay? Number 3, Adele and her mother most likely bought each of the following items by the pound except, now that's important, they bolded it and capitalized those letters for a reason because you're looking for the one answer choice that is not in pounds. Okay? Now remember we talked about the produce section, this fruits and vegetables, your potatoes and onions, everything you see in the front of the store that's over there with all the fruits and vegetables. Now you would find bananas in the produce section. So could you buy that in the in pounds? Yes, you could. What about meat? Well, it's not a liquid, so yes, I could measure it in pounds because it's not liquid. It's something they do sell by the pound. Onions, well, again, it's not a liquid, so that's one clue. I'm not going to use these measurements over here. 2, it's also in the produce section, so those are things that we would measure with weight. So that's another one that you would do by the pound. The last answer choice is water. Now notice that is the only one that is a liquid. So D makes the best sense because it would not be measured by the pound. It would be measured by one of these. Fluid ounces, cups, pints, quarts, gallons, liters, and milliliters. Okay, last question. Adele and her mother bought the box of cookies shown below. So I'm looking at this picture of cookies. Unit of measure. Well, what do you think is going to go here? It has 210 blank. First, we need to think to ourselves, cookies is a solid, it's not a liquid. So I don't want to use any of these down here. I want to use one of these because those are going to be for weight. What unit of measure most likely follows the number 210 on the front of the box? Grams. Well, I look down here, do I see grams? Yes. So that is a possibility. Milliliters. Well, it's not underneath weight, but I do see it underneath volume. But we don't want volume because it's not a liquid. Same thing for pints. Pints is for liquids. You can see it's right here. And cookies are definitely not liquid. Same thing, quarts. Quarts are for liquids also, so we definitely don't want to put quarts on our cookie package. So A would be the best answer choice. Okay, now we're going to go into a little bit of measuring. Now this is also a Star Master page. It is, I believe, page 125. I see it's cut off, but you can just look through your book and see if you can find these problems that we're about to go over. Number 1, Gabe poured 50 milliliters of water into his fishbowl. Which of the following shows the amount of water Gabe used to fill his fishbowl? Okay, so we're looking for 50 milliliters. Okay, now I'm looking right here. It is not on the 50. It has to be right on that line with a 50. I go down to B. Again, it's not right on the 50. It's a little bit underneath. C. I see, ooh, it looks like it's exactly on that line with the 50. This one, it's really, really close, but it does go a little bit above that dark line that lines up with the 50. So C is going to be your best answer choice. Okay, number 2. Martin bought the apples shown on the scale below. How much did the apples Martin bought weigh? So this is what I was talking about on the last slide. When you go to the produce section, the little silver tray where you weigh your produce, and then it tells you how many ounces or pounds. Okay. How much did the apples weigh? So I'm looking, it's in between 14 and 16 and right at this line. So we need to think, well, it can't be 14, it can't be 16, it has to be in between. Not 14, not 16. Well, what number comes between 14 and 16? 15 or 17? Definitely not 17. It's going to come after, going around like a clock, clockwise. So 15 ounces would be your best choice. Number 3. In science class, Jennifer measured the liquid shown below. How much liquid did Jennifer measure? Okay, so I see it's got 1 liter and 2 liters. It's not exactly on 1 liter, and it's not on 2 liters. So we need to figure out what would come in between on this first line. Well, this should kind of remind you of a ruler or a fractions. Okay, so if I look at fractions on a number line, I have to count the spaces first. Remember that? So there is 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So if I go to the first line after that, that means it's going to be 1/4. And how I got 4 on the bottom is because we counted 4 spaces. Okay? So now I see 2 answers that have 1/4. We can go ahead and eliminate B and D. Now, if I'm in between 1 and 2, am I going to pick 1 and 1/4 or 2 and 1/4? Well, 2 and 1/4 would not be between. It's going to be above 2. So A is going to be your best answer choice. Okay, so now you're going to see a page that looks like this in your packet. I've just kind of cropped it and only done the first 2 rulers. So you can follow along with me in your packet because this is in there. And I think I wrote on there notes and examples for you and even gave you some of the answers already. So let's look up here. It says count spaces between whole numbers. 4 spaces means you label with fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Remember, 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2, so we can also label 2/4 as 1/2. So you can see I've already labeled 1/4 because, like I said before, there's 4 spaces in between the whole numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where we get our denominator, 4s. You should remember this since we did this in class already on fractions. Now, this could be labeled 2/4, but then I also said, well, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. You can also see that this big line, these lines in the middle are a little bit longer because that's telling you that it's halfway. So everywhere you see this line that's right in the middle of the whole numbers and a little bit longer, you can label a half. 1/2, 1/2, and I've done it right here already. But now, once you get past 1 is when you have to start including your whole number with the fraction. This isn't going to be 1/4, it's going to be 1 and 1/4. 1 and 2/4, or like we said before, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So you can see that A stops right here, and I've labeled it 1 1/2. Okay, so let's go to B. Now, I've started at 2, and I'm ending up past 4, but that doesn't mean that this is over 4 inches long because we're not starting at 0. We're starting at 2. So I want to start by counting my whole number spaces between the 2 and the 4. use a different color. It's a lot of red going on there. So I'm going to skip my whole numbers. There's 1, 2. So that's going to be my whole number, 2. And then you can see that it goes right in the middle, and I've already labeled that as a half. Okay? Now we don't want to put 4.5 because it's not 4.5 inches long. Remember, we didn't start at 0, we started at the 2. So this is 2.5 inches long. Okay? Same thing as C. We can't possibly think that this is 5 inches long when this is the shortest line on here. You have to start at your whole number. It doesn't even go one whole jump, you know? It stops in between. So we're not going to have any whole number on this one. It lands right in the middle. So we could say 2/4 or 1/2. Since we're wanting to do to the nearest half inch, then 1/2 would be your best answer. Okay, last one that I'm going to go over with you, and then hopefully you should be able to finish the rest of this page nice and easy. Okay, now again, you have to pay attention to your whole numbers. It's not going one full jump, so we can't even say that it's one whole. It's less. So let's go ahead and label the fractions now. This would be 1/4, 2/4, or like we said before, it's the same as a half, and 3/4. Okay, now I look at the line of where D comes to, and it goes right in the middle. So D is going to be a 1/2 inch long. Okay, so I hope you're understanding that I'm not going to include the 3 because it's not actually 3 inches long. It's only going halfway and not even one full inch. Okay, all right, let's go to E. It starts at the 4 and goes to the 7. Does that mean it's 7 inches long? No, because we're not starting at 0. So let's count the whole numbers that it skips. So starting from 4, we're going to skip to 5. So that's 1 whole, 2 wholes, 3 wholes. So E is actually going to be 3 inches long. Okay, last one. We're starting at 8 and it goes to 9. So again, we want to count the holes. It's not 9 inches long. We have to jump from one hole, which is 8, to the next one, which is 9. We only do one jump, so that means it's 1 inch. It doesn't land on any of these lines in between the whole numbers, so that means we don't have to add a fraction. Okay? Last one, as you can see, this is still measuring, but it is in the metric system, which is centimeters and millimeters. So on a ruler we've used in class, you've seen that it has been marked with whole numbers, like you see down here, and then it has all these tiny little lines in between. Well, those tiny little lines in between are your millimeters. Milli actually means small, tiny. So those are your smaller ones. And there's actually 10 of them, 10 millimeters, inside 1 centimeter. So that means for 1 centimeter, it's going to be 10 millimeters. So for all of these, you can multiply by 10 to get the millimeters. Sorry, that's a 10. Or we've learned a trick for multiplying by 10. You add 1 0 to the end. So if I'm multiplying 12 times 10, I can take that 12 and put a 0 on the end of it. So this would be 120 millimeters. What would this one be? multiply, take the 3 and just add 1 0 to the end of it. 30. Same thing here. 40 times 10. We haven't even learned how to do a 2-digit number times a 2-digit number. So we use the trick. I'm going to take the 40 and just add 1 0. So that means 40 centimeters equals 400 millimeters. Same thing here. Take the 145, multiply it by 10, so that means we add 1 0 to the end. 1,450 millimeters is the same as 145 centimeters. Okay? Now part 2, you're going to circle the greater length for each pair. I'm only going to do A and we'll do D. Now the same thing, you want to take your centimeters and change it to millimeters. That way you're comparing numbers that are easy to compare. 4 centimeters is the same as 40 millimeters. So what is greater, 40 or 45? 45 is correct. So remember, we're circling the greater length. Okay, same thing here. We want to take our centimeters and change it to millimeters like we practiced up here. So we want to take our centimeters and multiply it by 10, or the trick is take that number and add 1 0 to the end. So that's 3,400 millimeters and 3,200 millimeters. So which one's greater? 340 centimeters or 3,400 was greater. All right, last section, measure to the nearest centimeter and or nearest millimeter. So it's kind of like rounding. If it's past halfway, then you want to round up to the next number. If it's less than halfway, then you want to round down to the lower number. Okay, so this line starts at 0 and goes almost to the 7. It's more than halfway, and it's a lot closer to the 7. So we would say it is 7 centimeters to the nearest. What else could we also say? We could say that it is 70 millimeters. Okay? Either one of those are acceptable answers. So as you're doing the rest of this, just make sure that you're rounding up if it's closer to the bigger one and more than halfway. You round down to the smaller number if it's less than halfway. Okay? All right, guys, I know this was a lot, but I hope that it helped a little bit with your measuring and with your volume, weight, and mass. And I know you might still have some questions, and even though this is my last video, don't think that you can't reach out to me and ask for help, because I'm here to help you. So just let me know if you need anything, and I will help you the best that I can. Bye, and I hope to see you guys soon.